the best and most well-known rum brands are from that Caribbean region, but most of their history has come from Africa. Enslaved Africans that were making rums as such. So it was a way to actually connect the past with the future for our actual brand.
Hi, welcome to Prebatch. I'm Gavin Wrigley. Today we're speaking with Ian Burrell. Ian is the Global Rum Ambassador. He has a long and illustrious career in hospitality. He's been a bar owner, a bartender. He's been an ambassador for a couple of brands, and now the general ambassador for rum. He has started a rum brand. He's authored a book. He's the founder of the RumFest. He's a world record holder and many other things under his belt. Today we speak about career progression, how to become an ambassador, bar ownership, how to start a spirit brand, rum classifications and rum culture, the relationship between Africa and the Caribbean. The drinks today are Piña Colada, the Right Hand, and the Burrell Daiquiri. Ian, thanks for doing this, man. Ian Burrell.
Oh, cheers. Thank you.
Global Rum Ambassador.
Oh, man.
So how do you become a Global Rum Ambassador? Tell me.
How do you become a global?
Who gave you that title?
I actually gave my own. I gave it to myself.
That's the spirit, man.
It was, it was more of, I love traveling, love rum. And it just felt apt to call myself a global rum ambassador, and then the global rum ambassador, because there was no other person representing rum as a category traveling around the world. So I said, well, why not me? I'm going to call myself the global rum ambassador as such. And that's where I am today after 20 years of doing it.
Yeah. So 20 years you've been calling yourself the global rum ambassador?
Yeah. I mean,
and what about before that?
Before that, it was actually UK Rum Ambassador. It was I only had one job for a company, and that was working with J. Ray Nephew, a Jamaican rum, and they made me the first UK Rum Ambassador for rum. Got a business card, had to wear a suit like 3 days a week in the mid '90s, and travel from one bar to another bar, just speaking to other bartenders, trying to sell Appleton rum and Jamaican rum into those particular bars. And it was nice. It was nice to go into other bars and learn about how they operated. Because when I went back to my bar and said, oh yeah, I plagiarized that, I'll take that, I'll use that to make my bar a better bar, or make myself a better bartender. So that's how I started off as a UK Rum Ambassador, or UK Brand Ambassador for Ray Nephew. And after I created RumFest in 2007, which was like the first international rum festival in the world, I then started seeing all these brands from all over the world and started learning more about these brands. And that's when I said, you know what, I'm going to be a global rum ambassador.
Yeah, man.
That's where it started.
Yeah.
That's where we are today.
Good for you, man. Yeah. Good for you. So you're a bartender by trade, right?
Yeah,
From
correct.
way back.
Yeah.
When did you start bartending? What year?
Pretty much. After I finished my A-levels at school, was supposed to take like 6 months off. Ended up taking years off.
Yeah.
My best friend Rafi got me into, actually first of all, I was a waiter for about 4 days. I dropped a pizza on someone's lap. I was so embarrassed. I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
The whole world just opened up when you drop a pizza on someone's lap in a restaurant on a busy Saturday night. But the bar manager loved my enthusiasm and that type of stuff. And he said, you should come and work on a bar. Yeah. And then he started teaching me some cocktails, and I loved it. It was just like putting things together. I used to, one of my O-levels was chemistry. So putting spirits together to come out with cocktails was like putting elements together to come out with my compounds. And that's how I saw it. So I just really loved making cocktails, making drinks, being behind a bar, getting that confidence as well. And it just started from there, and I still love going behind the bar, even though bartending's for young kids now. It's a young person's game. I still love going behind the bar and making drinks every now and again.
Yeah, me too. You can't do 10 hours anymore.
Oh man, no way.
Those rough shifts.
Those days are gone. Those days are
10
gone.
hours and then break down as well.
It's like when people say to me, do some guest bartending. I'm like, yeah. It ends up being guest drinking.
Yeah. It's like 2 hours of bartending.
2 hours max. That's it. Sometimes it's like 2 minutes.
A bit tired now, guys, to be fair.
That's it.
Yeah. So bartending. So you were a bartender, bar owner at some point?
Yeah. Got the opportunity to actually take over a bar I was managing in Camden Town, a place called Cotton's. So the previous owner had a little bit of trouble with the tax man. So he had to basically relinquish his bars as such. And one of the ways he did that was to have people that worked in the bar take over the business. And that's what I did. I took over the business and became owner of the bar restaurant. And it was great. It was great insight into running a business, into the whole how a bar works, restaurant works. Completely different from just being a bar manager. When you're actually a bar owner, you have to see things in a completely different way. So it was a great experience doing that, and I loved that. Did that for about 14 years.
You're a bar owner for 14 years?
Bar manager and owner 14 years. The owner part was about 6 years. And then but managed the place 8 years before that. But then it got to a stage where the economy had changed. The place wasn't as busy, but I couldn't devote as much time to the actual bar because I was traveling a lot more as a rum ambassador. And when you then pass it on to other people that become your managers, or they don't do it in the same way that you want to do.
It's hard to keep the soul in there.
Yeah, exactly. So I just called it a day and I said, you know what, I'm going to sell this back to my old boss. And then focus more on being the rum ambassador, traveling, also my RumFest as well. So it was nice. I do get tempted every now and again to maybe go back into the bar world and own a bar because I've got some great ideas, but it's tough. Running the bar is tough. I mean, you know that it's very, very tough. So I'm like, you know, I'll just be a happy customer or a consultant to other people.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, I was a manager for well over a decade, maybe 15 years before I was an owner, and then I've been an owner for 4 years now, something like that. And even after 25 years in the industry, 15 years as a manager, there's still a learning curve, which is crazy. You think after 25 years, you're like, okay, I'm ready to open a bar, and still you're like, oh no, you find out about VAT and payroll tax that you didn't know before, and you're like, it's like, actually, I didn't really want to be on a learning curve now. It's like, I wanted to have it nailed, but you never have it nailed. But that's also the beauty of it. So how would you compare being a bar owner to being an ambassador? What's the difference?
I think the ambassador part gives you a little bit more freedom. As I said, I love traveling, and when you don't have the confinements of the four walls of the establishment, I wouldn't say holding you back, but restricting your movement, you just feel much more free. And I've always been one of those free agents that just love floating around and going from here to there and learning new things and just opening my mind. And the thing I did love about running a bar and owning the bar was you got to meet a wealth of different people every day, but it was always on your terms, in your bar, in your place. Now I get to meet a wealth of different people on their terms, in their place, and learn more about their cultures and how they see life and things like that. So that's probably the main difference, is that you have a little bit more freedom to really learn and express yourself more being an ambassador. And then I've always subscribed to trying to be your own boss, create your own value. And in both cases, I was doing that. But now, as I said, I feel a lot more freedom being my boss to say, I'm going to travel here, or I'm not going to go there, or I want to see here, so let me just do it.
You also get to choose your audience a little bit when as an ambassador, whereas, as a bar, it's whoever books or walks in. You're cultivating a crowd to some degree, but as an ambassador, you're saying, this is what I do. If you like it, book me, or I'll come and So I guess there's a difference there. I ask because I suppose like a lot of bartenders, and I think back to when I was a young bartender, there wasn't many options. It was basically there was just a direct route up through management, and you were like, oh, okay, I guess I can be a venue manager. And back then you saw ambassadors, and you were probably one of the first. It was like a proper ambassador. Most ambassadors back when I was bartending were reps. They drove around in a car. They had like point of sale in the back of the car,
correct.
and you'd be like, you know, the Jaeger guy would come around, you'd be like, what have you got?
Yeah,
and he'd be like, I got these like orange bricks, and I got these t-shirts, and like, give me some of them.
Some of those.
And then we'd be like, yeah, like then he'd try and palm you off with some cocktails that have got like 60 mils of Jaeger in or something. You're like, okay, cool, I'll take it. And and then ambassadors, you know, like as the years have gone by, you know, ambassadorship has become a completely different animal. And different levels, local,
ambassadors
global.
also have to be marketers, they have to be salespersons as well. Before, you didn't have to sell as much, you just had to represent the actual product. As you said, giving away points of sale and that type of stuff, making sure that the account's got enough of your stock inside there and that type of stuff, but you didn't really have to sell as much as such. I mean, you got a couple bottles in this place and a couple bottles there, but we'd actually have sales reps that would actually close the deals and go in there and do things like that. So yeah, it was more of a being a face of the brand, the ambassadors, and then they started having to sell to justify their salary. It's like, right now you need to start getting rid of some bottles. I'm like, what, really?
I suppose it depends on the economy at the time, right?
I used to get in trouble sometimes because I didn't spend enough. I'd go into my bosses would say to me, oh Ian, you need to go into bars, you need to spend more money. I'm like, on what? I'm like, well, on the rum. So if you see a bottle in the bar, buy it, or buy drinks for everyone around the bar and that type of stuff, then leave and go to another bar. That was a lot of what I had to do as an ambassador. Now it's a case of not only doing that, but then you also need to check on the orders and that type of stuff and make sure you find out who their suppliers are and organize deals. Do they want a 3-for-1 and that type of stuff, or a case deal? There's a lot more to it than just being that face of the brand and just giving away points of sale like we used to do back in the day.
I guess it's like just like as the role has become a more mature role, people keep adding things to it, like everything, you know, like it just keeps on getting added to it and stuff. So how do you pair that? So you're like, you work with a bunch of brands, but you also have your own brand, Equiano. So tell me how did that come apart, and how did that come about, and how do you pass that with working with other brands?
All right, okay. Well, I mean, the Equiano story started off with two of my business partners. They had an idea to do a rum. They thought it was a good idea. I told them it wasn't, because they were going to bring me as a consultant, because everyone's like, you need to work with Ian or get Ian as a consultant and that type of stuff. And the more I sat down with them and the more I actually assessed my own life, I said to myself, I got to a stage, I got two young boys, and got to a stage where I need to start leaving things for them, because being an ambassador, a rum ambassador, people hire me for what I say, or maybe how I make people feel. But it's not a product I can leave for somewhere else. A commodity I can leave for someone else. So it's a case of, I need to have something I can pass on. So instead of creating brands for other people, maybe I should be looking to create my own brand. But that takes a lot of work and a lot of time. So you need to find partners that could bring things to the table that are like-minded and help your brand grow. But it also leverages some of your time as well. So listening to them, and I was like, you guys seem like you know what you want and that type of stuff, and I could work with you. And I just said to them, listen, okay, I will come up with some ideas. I've got a great idea for a style of rum, even the person to make it. And if you agree with that, then we'll sign the deal together, and we'll start working together. And that's how it came about. Equiano came about, being that unique rum from Barbados and Mauritius. But how I work with other brands, I've always been about promoting the category. And fortunately, I've been in a unique position where individual companies value what I say, or how I make their customers feel about their brand. Because I always say to every company, if you want me to say your rum is the best rum in the world, you've got the wrong person. I'm about the category of rum. And what I'll do is say how great rum is and show people how your rum is part of that. Rising tides floats all boats, as I like to say. And that's the same with Equiano. And because I've been that way, it's still very easy for me to still work with so-called rival brands or other brands, as well as my own brand. Because if they're not drinking Equiano, then they're going to be drinking one of the other quality rums I represent or talk about. So I'm happy, because the more people are drinking quality rums, the more quality rums are being sold. And then my brand will be part of that, because I believe it's a good rum. So it's a win-win-win situation for everyone in that sense. So that's how I'm still able to work with lots of other brands. And there'll be times I'm working exclusively for a particular brand and I don't mention Equiano. I don't talk about Equiano. Yeah. People ask me about it. I'm like, well, I'm not here to talk about Equiano. I'm here to talk about this brand because I'm now talking about Cuban rums, or I'm talking about Puerto Rican rums or Venezuelan rums or Jamaican rums. I'm not talking about African Caribbean rums. After we finish, maybe we can talk about that. So so that's how I am. That's how I've been fair, and that's how I've still managed to actually carry on working with different rums within the category, as well as owning my own brand.
Yeah, I'll back you up on that. I've known you for a while. We've communicated a lot about rums, and you always push rum as a category. Like, you know, even if you're talking about a specific brand, like it's rum first, and the brands are all part of this, and it's community and culture and history first, you know, and locations before brands come in. So,
and this is in fact this is the method of how I teach other brand ambassadors, other rum ambassadors, or when I'm working with companies, I always say to them, your brand ambassador has to be a rum ambassador first before your brand. Because if you want them just to be your brand ambassador and not know anything about the category of rum, you're going to fail. Because I remember when I first started off just as an Appleton ambassador, I didn't know much about the category. And I was in New Zealand. That's actually where I actually came up with the idea. I'm going to be a rum ambassador, global rum ambassador. In New Zealand back in 2003.
Living there or?
Oh no, he's working, just launching Appleton down there. New Zealand rum drinking country, massive brand called Karuba, which was made by Appleton. And what the strategy was to get the people that were drinking Karuba up until like 20, 22, 23, who then migrated onto a bourbon or like a Jim Beam, to keep them into rum. So we had to get them a quality rum that was a lot better in flavor profile than Karuba. So Appleton said, well, let's get them on Appleton. Keep them in rum, but get them into a rum that has a similar type of profile. Well, not similar profile, but same type of mindset as a Jim Beam. So I was out there and the bartenders were asking me questions about other rums. They're like, oh, Appleton's great, but what's the difference between this and Bacardi? I'm like, Bacardi's from Puerto Rico. And that's all I had. That was all I didn't have any justification for that. So I had to learn more about Puerto Rican rums. What makes a Puerto Rican rum? Why is it different from Jamaican rum? Then I could then say, well, it's a Jamaican style rum. This is a Puerto Rican style rum that's drunk in this particular way, or it's used in this particular way, where Puerto Rican rum is used in another way. And here's some cocktail recommendations, how I would use both of these rums. So I've given these guys the tools to actually really elevate their own brand, but by elevating the category and understanding the category itself. So, and that's a philosophy I use when I'm talking about rums in general, and that's a philosophy I try and pass on to brand ambassadors, potential brand ambassadors. Know your category, be a category ambassador first, then be your brand ambassador, because that way everyone prospers, and it makes people think you know what you're talking about as well. If you can talk about other brands.
Yeah, I remember being like a very young bartender, 18, 19 years old. And I think, you know, people used to, like, I'm from the UK, you know, people order Bacardi and Coke back in the day. And I'm pretty sure that most people wouldn't have known that Bacardi was a rum.
They didn't.
They just thought of it. Bacardi was a stronger brand than rum itself as a category, which means rum was either really poorly branded or Bacardi was really well branded or probably both.
A bit of both,
So that's interesting.
It's, I remember driving past a pub one time in the early 2000s and just laughing at the sign where it had like, 2-for-1 vodka, tequila, gin, rum, Bacardi.
And then, it's a separate thing.
It's like, what? It's like, but actually backfired for Bacardi, and then they changed their strategy, and that happened actually, funny enough, about a year later after RumFest, where they created a concept called Build Belief, and it was to let the world understand that rum is the next big thing. Bacardi is a rum. And Bacardi is part of that growth, that new thing. So they started training bartenders. They started talking about how their rum is made. They started talking about their history and their heritage. And a lot of Bacardi haters at the time that were bartenders in the industry started to gain love for Bacardi. They also started recruiting some of the top bartenders to become brand ambassadors as well. They then created the cocktail competition, the Legacy competition, which was one of the best cocktail competitions I think ever created as a bartender competition. So they really started to build belief. And all of a sudden, sudden, in like the space of 3-4 years, Bacardi then became respectable and became associated with rum as such. I mean, it still has its haters because some people are comparing apples and pears, and it's big. They're saying,
everybody, you get contrarians in everything, and it's like, if you're big, you're the devil, like for everything.
Correct.
And it's like, Bacardi is one of them, and they also have Patron, which is another one of them. Like people, I have people, maybe talk smack about Patron, and I'm like, dude, like, do you realize like how good quality Patron is for the size that they are?
Correct, 100%.
If you actually go there, not to switch to tequila, but like if you actually go to Patron and realize how many Tajonas they have, they're not just power everything through a diffuser like some other big brands, like that takes that takes some morals. So
I was very fortunate to have a tour around there with Francesco before he passed. The blender and distiller. But I was so impressed with what they did and what they do and what they did. But also, we look at tequila now as a category. It's massive, and a lot of that is owed to Patron. I still remember videos back in the early days, like 2012, where there was one series of video called "The Bartender Hates You," where the bartender's just taking the mickey out of the customers or just saying the things we want to say but we couldn't say. And it's like some nightclub, and this guy, this arrogant customer, is like, I'll have free tequilas, like waving his hand. The bartender looks at him and like, oh man. So he pours out free tequilas, and as the customer turns around, he sees him pour the tequila around. He says, "Hey, wait, I asked for free tequilas." He's like, "Yeah, that's free tequila." He said, "I mean Patron." Patron, you know Patron. So the bartender just grabs a free tequilas, knocks him back, sticks his finger up, and then walks away. But that was Patron back in the days. People, it was like Hoover and Vacuum. People call vacuums Hoover because of the brand was so big.
Branding,
but really, it's a vacuum. So tequila was Patron to a lot of people that went to the clubs and started elevating tequila more than just something you can just like just knock back. Oh, it's like
thank you, sir.
Got a pre-batch daiquiri.
Pre-batch daiquiri. Thanks for the branding.
Oh, thank you,
sir. Soundbite right there.
A soundbite.
Thanks, Seb.
Thanks, Seb.
Cheers. What do we got here?
I think we have. I think this is a Burrell Daiquiri.
Can't.
Oh, yes, it is. So this is one of my favorite styles of daiquiris. I don't know why it's called a Burrell Daiquiri, but it's light rum, lime juice, agave instead of sugar syrup. Then 3 dashes of orange bitters, and just to finish it off, just a twist of orange peel on the top. Just get the oil, so you bring out the orange and lime notes, but really nice and easy drinking. And hopefully it is. Oh, yeah, that works. Oh, yeah, nice and light and easy. Very refreshing.
Yeah.
But I love a daiquiri. Daiquiri for me is the king of rum cocktails. It's a nice little welcome drink to any party, any event. If you have a small one, we call it a snackery. You have a little snack, little snack when you go into a bar and that type of stuff. The bartender welcomes you and pour by a little series of them. So that's why I think every bar that bartenders go to and that type of stuff, you should have those little tiny coupettes ready for snackeries, just to greet people.
You know the nightmare though, because this is the nightmare at my bar, because I've tried to convince my business partner, who's more operational than I am, like to have that, and he's like, we haven't got the glass washer space, man.
Right, yeah.
You know, he's like, we can do them in shot glasses, no problem.
Yeah.
Do you realize how many of those, like hundreds of these tiny little coupes you have to have?
You're probably right.
It's just like, they're all stemmed, they're all awkward to carry.
Easy to
it's
break
nice
as well.
though. You probably shouldn't let the glass washer run your business, but sometimes operations do come into play.
Makes perfect sense.
This is banging, man.
Excellent.
So, single strain over double strain, right?
Oh, 100%.
I have to get this.
I bet he's double strained.
I think he's double strained. I can't
see any little bits of ice inside it.
He's too much of a purist. Man. He won't listen to you.
I like my when I do a daiquiri, I always do a single strain inside there, because I like the little bits of ice chips on top of the daiquiri. Change the flavor as you're drinking it. If you're in a nice, hot, humid country like we are, it melts anyway. So. It just adds a bit of dilution.
I am a purist at heart, but I think I can totally see the benefit in it. You might have convinced me a little bit.
Cheers, thank you.
A little bit. For a daiquiri, but for most things, no.
For most things, but for daiquiri, just slightly different. And the other thing as well is, if you really want to get geeky on there, if you go back to Jennings Cox's handwritten recipe, I think it's like 1898, which you can see online and that type of stuff, actually says single strain.
For a Hawthorne.
So
So it's historical.
It's good enough for him.
Yeah,
it's good enough
historical.
For us.
What's tell me about the African / Caribbean thought behind Equiano.
So the thought behind that was Caribbean is the epicenter of the rum world. This is where arguably all the best rums in the world are made. No disrespect to Australia, New Zealand, Africa, and Asia, and the Americas, and even Europe. The best, the most well-known rum brands are from that Caribbean region, but most of their history has come from Africa. Enslaved Africans that were making rums as such. So it was a way to actually connect the past with the future for our actual brand. Now, Africa as a continent, there's a lot of sugarcane growing there, but not much international rum brands being sold worldwide. There's a few countries that have had what's called relationships with either the countries that colonized them. So they were selling rum into those countries, places like Mauritius and Seychelles, South Africa, as such. So what I wanted to do was try and create a brand that took part of the history, also worked with what's happening today, but also then create something for the future. And the future is having African rum companies working with Caribbean rum companies, either in knowledge, either swapping barrels or sending one rum from one place to another place, trading.
Yeah,
as such. So that was the whole idea of creating the world's first African and Caribbean rum. And then it was, which rums are going to use? Which rums are going to be quality enough to actually give to consumer to say, oh, you know what, I can drink that. I like that. I like that as much as my Scotch or as much as my Irish whiskey or as much as my American whiskeys or cognacs. So which countries? Fortunately, being a rum ambassador and traveling, work with many, many countries, and one of them is Mauritius.
A few contacts. Just a couple of people you knew, yeah.
So Mauritius is one of those countries that I've done a lot of work with, which has been, I love Mauritius, a great place. I actually call it the Green Island because pretty much every blade of grass on the island is sugarcane.
Yeah.
It's growing everywhere. It goes up the walls and all that type of stuff, outside of mountains.
So I guess there's sugarcane pretty much all sub-Saharan Africa, right?
Yeah. Anywhere between the tropics and Cancer and Capricorn, you'll find sugarcane growing rampantly there. Has for hundreds, thousands of years, in fact. Yeah. And of course, rum has to be made from sugarcane. So sugar's growing there. They sell a lot of sugar into Europe, called Demerara sugar, funny enough, which is in Guyana. It's a style as opposed to a region when it comes to sugar.
I always thought there's quite a lot of Demerara sugar for the size of the Demerara region.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a style of sugar. So having that sugar there's also a lot of molasses. There's a lot of rum being made there. Asian French oak, Asian American oak, sold into France, sold into Europe, but tasty. So that was the base of, or the start of the style of rum we wanted to create. And then it was which Caribbean country or distillery do we work with? Now, being a Jamaican, I love Jamaican rums, but Jamaican rums can be an acquired taste to a lot of people, where Barbados rums are a little bit more versatile, dare I say it. And actually one of the best rum or spirit makers in the world is based in Barbados, and he's a good friend. So it was easy to go to him and say, Rich, will you make my rum for me?
Foursquare, right?
Yeah, Foursquare. Yeah. And he loved the idea of bringing rums in from Africa into the Caribbean, because normally it's the other way around, as in not from the Caribbean into Africa, it's Caribbean to everywhere else. It was quite novel to actually bring rum into the Caribbean to be blended to create a new style. And that's how the concept started. And so the one we have there, the original, that's the first. We have 3 at the moment, but there are others to come, but they will always be based on a blend of rums from the African continent and the Caribbean region.
Okay. Not necessarily Mauritius, but...
Not necessarily Mauritius, yeah. We've last year I was in Ghana looking at some rums out there to use in future blends. We're looking to get rums from places like Liberia as well, South Africa. So yeah, pretty much anywhere that grows sugarcane that has a distillery or a facility where we see the potential, see the potential of making a world-class spirit. And of course, that can work with Foursquare rums, because Foursquare will be our home. That's the DNA of our rum.
So Foursquare will stay for everything.
Correct.
That'll be the receiver. And then
that'll be the receiver. Again, it's all part of the story.
Cool.
It's all part of the story as well. It's where rum got its name in Barbados, rum bullion from back in the days. So again, it's part of that story of rum traveling from Africa, going to Barbados, the home of rum, and then being sent to other parts of the world. And we had all that idea, created all that idea and that concept even before we got the name. The name came after, and it just worked. Equiano. Equiano was a man that I learned about in like weekend school, Saturday school. Didn't learn it in normal curriculum. Alauda Equiano was like an abolitionist. He was an author, writer, freedom fighter, entrepreneur. He was kidnapped at 11, taken from West Africa to Barbados in around 1756, sold into slavery there, and then from there went to America and the UK. And our rum makes the same journey. It starts in Africa, goes to Barbados, some goes to America, some goes to the UK. So we wanted to purposely do that, to follow that journey he made. But the most remarkable thing about Equiano was after learning how to speak English by the time he was like 12, 13, so only took about a year and a bit to learn about the ships that he was working on as like a navigator. One of his owners said to him, if you can raise enough money, as in the money I paid for you, which was about £40 at the time, if you can raise that money, you can buy your own freedom. And he did. Took him 5 years of selling rums, selling spices, trading back in the Caribbean to buy his own freedom. And with his freedom, came back to England, became a hairdresser down in London, and also then became an abolitionist because of some of the stuff he saw in the Caribbean. He was basically saying to a lot of British people, this is what's happening, because a lot of people in England didn't know what's happening in the Caribbean. They'd never seen enslavement and that type of stuff. They had their own troubles, the poverty that was happening in England as such. So when he decided to write his book to talk about his stories, being one of the first Africans to actually write a book at that particular time, his memoirs, a lot of people was like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. So he helped with that movement for the abolition. Then he got people like Wilberforce involved, took his book into Parliament and campaigned for the abolition of slavery. And all of that then culminated with the Transatlantic Slave Act of 1807, which abolished the people trafficking of humans from Africa into the Caribbean. So a lot of that, most of that was started by Equiano's movement. So again, I just wanted to pay homage to him. As such, and as a company, which is one of the things I said to my business partners, if we're going to do that, then we have to have some sort of philanthropic mindset. So what we do is we donate $2, €2 and £2 for every bottle we sell to our foundation, which is working with Anti-Slavery International at the moment. And then once we start making a profit, it'll be 5% of the profits will be going back into that organizations like that around the world, ground level organizations that are working with, as a people trafficking, whether it be in Africa, Asia, Europe, the UK, the Americas, and create awareness because that's what Equiano would have wanted at that particular time. So that's the story behind the brand, why it's called Equiano,
what a life,
why it travels that way, and Equiano even today is turning people's heads. Google recently laid a fiber optic line from Europe to Africa through Nigeria, then South Africa. They laid that 2 years ago. They called it the Equiano cable.
Oh, really?
And it's because I didn't realize, fiber optics for the internet and that type of thing, it's all undersea as such.
It's crazy.
So that's the Google line there. Cambridge, where Equiano's wife was born, they've just renamed the bridge in Cambridge at university, Equiano Bridge. There's a few blue plaques now in the centre of London of where he lived and where he wrote the book as such. So I'm always inviting people to come to London, have a sip of Equiano rum, either near where he lived or on his doorstep.
On the Equiano Bridge.
On the Equiano Bridge. Well, I haven't done that yet, but I probably will do that.
Get on the Equiano Wi-Fi.
Yeah, something like that. In fact, that'd be a good one. We might do that. But so it was a case of just telling a story, but through rum. Because we love telling stories, the rum industry. Again, rum has a history, and we didn't want to shy away from the history of what rum was about.
You're right. I mean,
tell that story.
Got a deep history with slavery, and I always, I always hear this, but I like it's so hard to picture it. But you hear that there's more slavery today than there ever has been.
I know, yes,
and
true.
I always think is that just like because there's more people?
Or I think it's because there's more people, and I think people are I wouldn't say cleverer now getting away with it, but. When we talk about modern day slavery, we're talking about everything from child slavery, child labor, working in sweatshops in places around the world and not being paid or being abused. Exactly, women being exploited and taken from one country to another country to be used as sex slaves and that type of stuff. So we see a lot of lot of different types of slavery today. I always say slavery is not about a color; it's about people. So that's what we're looking to try and make a change about, because human beings can be the most cruelest people on the planet, especially to other human beings as such. And we may look at each other and say, that's just absolutely mad. But some people are justifying it because of money, because of power. And I just don't know how they can actually live that way. But there are people like that, unfortunately. And you're right. Today, there are a lot, because there are more people, there's more people to exploit. And there are a lot of people still being exploited even more today with modern day slavery.
And I suppose, I think most people are guilty of, they hear that word slavery and they have that very narrow view of American slavery, 1700s, early 1800s, and that's it. And you're like, that's not it,
Exactly. I mean, the word slave is not even it's Slav, isn't it?
Slavic,
it comes from it came from Slavic, so there was enslavement of people from as long as there's been human beings and another set of human beings, there's always been enslavement of human beings. Again, you're right. People will do. When they think of slavery, they automatically default to the enslavement of Africans, because that was the most traumatic definitely for Africans. But it's the one that is focused on a lot in the news and in the mainstream, just because of repercussions that are happening today as such. But there is all forms of slavery happening today as such. And again, the more we talk about it, the better, because then people become more comfortable. And that's the most important thing about it. People be comfortable with it, not feeling guilty or anything, just like feeling comfortable with talking about it, because that's the only way we'll beat it.
And focusing on what you can do,
what you can do.
I don't want to get into a reparations discussion, but I just think what do you want to focus on? Do you want to focus on saying sorry for stuff that happened 100 years ago, the way you weren't even born? Or do you want to say, okay, there's this stuff happening right now to real people who are alive right now that we can actually do something about. We can get them out of that.
Exactly.
That's maybe the thing which we should be focusing on.
When I do my presentation at Equiano, I have a quote from Confucius, and he says, focus all your energies on changing the future, not dwelling in the past type thing. And that's exactly what you just said is exactly right. We focus our energies on changing the future, making the future better, instead of dwelling in the past. We'll be a better people as such, because you're right. I mean, you mentioned reparations there. Some people think reparations is about, we need to give money out there. That's not going to work. No. One of my favorite sketches from Dave Chappelle was when some guys all got money, and the first thing they did was bought a KFC. One guy bought this big truck of cigarettes, and that a pack of cigarettes, and blew all the money straight away. No, for me personally, reparations basically means working with some countries that had a disadvantage because they weren't the superpowers, they weren't the Western powers, and working with those countries to raise up their game. Wiping out debts. That country, like Haiti, only recently just paid back France after all those years. And we see Haiti in the country, the state the country's in. We should be focusing our energies on up in that country, better in that country. That is reparations. Invest in. Let's invest in these countries that have had a disadvantage when it comes to prospering in the Western world. That is, for me, true reparations. Ignoring it is, that's the opposite of that. So
giving them an opportunity to,
fair trade.
Them the same opportunities that
trading,
we have.
fair trade. We're seeing in the Caribbean, in relation to rum, we're seeing sugar factories closing down because they can't get a fair price for their sugar, which means if you can't get the fair price for your sugar, then you stop growing sugar cane. And then if you stop growing sugar cane, you now have to import your molasses from somewhere else to make your rum, as opposed to growing your own sugar and making your rum locally as such. Now, if the price was adjusted and they got tariffs were either waived or there was some form of fair trade in there, then there'll be money, because everyone's going to have sugar. Sugar's a dangerous drug. Everyone's going to have sugar. But if you've got countries that are trading with each other equally and giving them a fair price and that type of stuff, then of course they're going to prosper because they're making money there. You're going to prosper because you're buying stuff and then turning it into something else. And it's just a massive spiral at the moment. And sometimes you just need someone to stop, or the world to slow down and say, right, we need to look at things in a different way. That did happen 4 years ago because of COVID. The world did slow down and people were looking at things in a different way. But now it's starting to speed back up again, and we're ignoring all the things that we may have done 4 years ago when everyone thought doomsday was coming.
It's crazy how quickly you unlearn your lessons, right? Especially as a society. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
You know, you tell yourself, I'm going to be different. You know? And then you get back in the rat race and it's just the same again. You're working myself to the bone again, or whatever it is that you were doing before.
That's it. Yeah.
But tell me about setting up a rum brand, because I think an interesting thing for me, like that maybe people don't realize, like, you know, like there's a couple of ways you can start like a spirit brand. Yeah. And one is build a distillery, which is insane
and terribly expensive. And
build a distillery, distill something, and then age it for like 5 years before you ever sell a product. Yeah. Terrible business model. Yeah. Or you can do, you know, like the smart thing or the intermediary thing, which is like, you know, buy rums, blend, age, shape it how you want it to be shaped. Maybe like specify how it's distilled. So like, so from what point in the process do you, I mean, I guess you're involved from all the way, but like what was the process like for you? Like,
well, I mean, with the rum, we definitely weren't going to be building a distillery because that's too expensive.
It's crazy though.
Too expensive, too crazy. So again, very fortunate that I have a relationship actually directly with the distilleries. So I can go to the actual distilleries or go to the guy and say, listen, this is the style of rum I want. Do you have any to sell? Or if you don't have any to sell, can I buy some in the future? So you may pay down on it and then wait for a couple of years before it gets old. So you may buy some 6-year-old, and then because you need an 8-year-old for your blend, and then you wait a couple more years. You only waited 2 years as opposed to waiting a whole big 8 years. Now, if you don't have that relationship with a distillery, then you go to a broker or a blender, someone like EA Skier in Amsterdam, and they're the biggest buyers of rum in the world. And they have rum from all over the world, from Barbados and Jamaica and Trinidad, Panama, Dominican Republic. And you basically go there and it's like you go into a shop and you say, you know what, fancy a really nice light type of rum, a little bit of Trinidad or Panama, or I want something really big and heavy, big funky Jamaica in there. Or you go there and say, here's a brand. I want it to taste like this. And then they'll send you samples. And then once you agree on that sample, you can buy 200 liters, you can buy 2,000 liters or 20,000 liters of that blend. And that's your recipe. Now that you can do that today, but that is exactly how rum was being sold and made hundreds of years ago. Not many people own distilleries, and if they did, they made rum for themselves, or they'd made rum for a contract. So you might go to a one rum distillery in, say, Jamaica, and say, listen, I want my Gavin rum to have this flavor profile, really funky and that type of stuff, and they'll make a specific style of rum and sell you. Mount Gavin, there you go. But I can go to the same distillery and I'm like, oh, I like the Gavin rum, but can you make it a little bit more lighter? And I want more people to drink it. He's a bit of a geek, this Gavin guy, and only a certain amount of people are going to be drinking his rum. So yeah, they'll have my recipe. So we'll buy our rum from the same distillery, but they'll make 2 different styles of rum. More cocktails. I was just saying rum, more cocktails.
Thank you, sir.
So yes.
Cheers, Seb.
Yes, Seb. So that's another way of doing it. Going to a blender or a broker with your recipe or your idea of what you want for rum. They will blend it, give you the samples, and then you have to come out with the concept of the name, the bottle, where you're going to market it, who your customer is, as such. So yeah, we had to go through all those processes for Equiano. But again, I didn't have to go to the broker first. I went straight directly to distilleries. Yeah. Now that has its own challenges because a lot of distilleries work on their time as such, not your time. When you want a rum and
especially
you want it,
Caribbean and African islands.
Tell me about that.
Island time.
Yeah, island time. Yeah. But and other things like, as well that you don't expect, like you buy some rum from Mauritius and it's on its way to the Caribbean via the Suez Canal. And someone decides to block the Suez Canal with a large super tanker.
Who was that?
Some stupid company, I don't know. But I'm watching the news, and all of a sudden, a super tanker is blocked the Suez Canal, and none of the boats can get through. I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Were you stuck in that traffic jam?
Yeah, we were. We were stuck in a traffic jam. And you either stood behind there until they could move this boat that was wedged in the Suez Canal, which took them weeks.
Yeah, I remember.
Or you could do a U-turn and go all the way around South Africa, all the way out the Atlantic, to come all the way back up towards Europe to get to Rotterdam before it gets sent to Barbados. So it was like,
luckily you didn't have a perishable product on board. Imagine if you were carrying apples,
I can imagine
fresh sugar cane.
I think there was a lot of people lost a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure. That was in the middle of COVID, wasn't it?
That was, it was. So it was a bit of a crazy time.
Just to add insult to injury. Like, Also, we blocked this canal, guy. Stop with this stuff. Who's running this world?
Yeah, oh man. So and then even around those sides there, you got pirates as well, modern day pirates. Going after ships and
going. It always used to be what's that country that was famous for modern day pirates on the.
You got Somalia.
Somalia,
because that was because that got Somalia really close to Red Sea and that type of stuff. And that shipping lane is one of the most. In fact, I think it's the busiest shipping lane in the world, just because of the fact that all of the super tankers, if they're coming from Asia into Europe, from that part of Asia into Europe, they have to go through the Suez Canal. They're going from Africa into Europe, they have to go through the Suez Canal. If you're going the other way, it's through the Panama Canal. So they're the two busiest. So if one's blocked, and it's like, and as you know, if you got lots of rich and important products coming through, and you are desperate in that type of thing, you may become desperate enough to become a pirate as such. So that's unfortunately that's happening from day dot. We had pirates in the Caribbean, didn't we? So pirates all over the world going after and stealing stuff from other people. So it's a horrible thing to happen, but it does happen. So policing those waters is also another important thing, but it also adds on to the price of your raw material. So having a rum made from the distillery or getting it from the distillery has its challenges, has its benefits, has its challenges. It's a lot easier just going to a broker in Europe that already has the rum there, and you just go in your shopping
list. Cost is already baked in,
Give them your tick list and say, right, I want it to taste like this, bam, make that. So so if you're not building a distillery, you're working directly with distilleries. If you're not working directly with distilleries, you're working with a broker, a blender that already bought rums from.
Well, that's interesting. I think that makes it feel possible to people, because I think it you see I've got plenty of friends, who've started brands or whatever, and I understand how it works, but I can imagine from some people's perspective, they go, you started a rum brand, so they must think in their head that you built this building and you built distilleries, and you can do that. It's not that you can't do that, but it's not like prohibitively, it is expensive to build a big distillery, but you can build a small distillery for not that much, not create a micro distillery or something like that. Probably more of the problem is aging it. For 8 years before you get, you put all this money in, and then you have to wait 8 years before you get your product. Which is why so many like bourbon brands and stuff, if they build a distillery, especially in New York, I remember when I was living there, they all make gin first. So they
same as in the UK.
They make gin, and then we'll talk about whiskey in a few years. We're aging some stuff; it might not even work. I'm gonna wait 8 years. It might not taste great.
Well, they're doing that's the same thing in the UK. UK now there are at least about 50 distilleries that are making rum. In the UK, all over from Cornwall to Devon to London, loads up in Scotland as well. And again, all of these distilleries will make banging, isn't it?
Yeah, what is that?
This one is the right hand, which is like a rum Negroni. So we got 2 parts rum, 2 parts rum, 1 part sweet vermouth, 1 part Campari, and then 3 dashes of chocolate bitters. Inside there.
Chocolate bitters.
So this
you doubled the rum as well.
Yeah, you doubled the rum, so you don't do equal parts like in a normal Negroni. This was created by a bartender called Michael McCroy from Milk and Honey in New York, and it was a riff on the left hand. The left hand was made with whiskey. I think it was either bourbon. I think it was bourbon he used, or I think it might be bourbon or Scotch. One of the two whiskeys.
Boulevardier, isn't it?
Boulevardier would be probably similar to that. Yeah, but on the left hand, he actually did the chocolate bitter type thing, and I think he served it slightly different. But I just love the rum version, and when you got really nice, rich flavored rum inside there, it's just an easy drink. And it's not as, I wouldn't say it's with gin, I wouldn't say you get a little bitterness, which is nice to complement the Campari, but with the rum, it just adds a layer of roundness and to it, and with the chocolate bitters, just lengthens that.
I knew you were going to slag off gin at some point.
Oh, I'm not slagging off gin. Gin's all right. Gin's all right. Charlotte Voisey might be listening to this, and I can't be doing that because she'll slap me next time she sees me, and I won't know why.
She might do it anyway, man. You never know.
She'll probably just slap me just to say, you're going to curse gin one day, so I'm going to slap you now.
So it's a left hand or a right hand? I'm confused.
This one's a right hand.
A right
hand. This is called a right hand.
Red right hand.
When I use Equiano rum in this, I call it the freedom hand or the free hand, just because he was a free man type thing. So that's what we call it.
Okay. That's nice.
Oh, yes. But yeah, as I was talking about with rum distilleries or distilleries in England, you get a lot of them making rum, making white rums, so unaged. But now they're also laying down rums for aging. So I recently tasted a 5-year-old rum from the Portsmouth distillery. So they've been at this for like 5 years now, and that's one of the oldest rums in England now. And it's decent rum as well. So there's a few rums now doing that. Another friend of mine up in Nottinghamshire, he's built a distillery. He says it's the biggest rum distillery in Europe. I think the guys in Spain might challenge him. And there's a few rum distilleries on the islands, and they're part of Europe still. But yeah, he's got this big, massive double retop pot stills like they have in Jamaica. He's making like big, heavy, funky rums. Even creating like muck and dunder and things like that. So his distillery is called Dropworks. And he's doing some great stuff there. But again, he's got rum aging. But at the moment, he's doing unaged rums and spice rums. Spice rum for me is the new gin. When people say, is rum the new gin? Like, no, spice rum is the new gin because you don't have to age it. And you just you make your rum, add some spices to it, and sell that straight away as spice rum or a spirit drink, as it legally has to be called if you've added stuff to rum in Europe.
Drink.
Spirit drink. So a lot of people are doing that, and while their rum is aging, trying to make money off their spice rums or their unaged rums, or gin, as you said.
Yeah, because I know, like, I've travelled around a few distilleries, and I've done Scotland and Scotch and Irish whiskey a bunch of times, and you start to realise actually that rum plays a bit of a role there. You know,
massively.
There's you've got rum cask finishes, which I think some people think, oh, rum cask, it just seems like a bit of a gimmick. Like, no, there's history there.
There's not a gimmick. Far from it.
There's historical rum distilleries in Scotland,
correct?
And in England that have been making rum for hundreds of years,
or buying rums, as I say, from the distillery and aging them side by side with their whiskey, because they knew that the market that drank their whiskey also loved the good rum. Britain's always had a history of drinking rums ever since the Royal Navy decided to incorporate it as part of their rations. So for a couple of hundred years, rum has always come back into England. British people have been drinking it. The Navy's been drinking it, and they were taking it around the world to places like Australia as well, who had a rum rebellion out there when they overthrew their government. And that time it wasn't only about rum, but they called it a rum rebellion because of molasses and prices that were being bestowed on them by the Brits. But rum has been part of British culture for a while. So it's natural that these distilleries that are also making whiskies are going to be aging rum and now making rums as such. And one particular person, a guy named Mark Rene, who started off I think it's a Bruichladdich distillery and bought and sold that. He has invested and created a distillery in Grenada called Renegade. And that's been going for about 3 years now as rum. He's aging rums, but he's also selling unaged rums as well. And he's been focusing on terroir. So he's been different types of sugarcane growing in different regions of Guyana. He's making rum based on each parcel or each area that these sugarcanes are from. So you'd said to me before, a lot of people, when we're talking about rums and the different styles of rums, never make that connection between rum and, say, wines. And they should do, because there is so much similarity, especially when you're making raw sugarcane juice rums and you're really crushing and getting the flavor from the different canes and different terroir inside there and concentrating it inside a pot still. Yes, you're going to have different styles of rums just from different cane.
Do you think that's unique to agricole rums?
You don't
get so much terroir from molasses.
More unique, because once you've gone to the molasses stage and you've cooked the juice and you've crystallized, it starts to crystallize, you take the sugar out, you're now getting a different raw material with different flavor profiles, which makes a different style of rum. But I think you lose a lot more of the nuances from the different types of sugarcane. So, but then terroir comes in a different way. It's where you age that rum now.
It's more cultural than the earth.
So it's a different type of terroir. Even the know-how of the person that made the rum is part of that. So if you get the same two rums and you age one in Barbados and one, in fact, if you age one in the south of Barbados and you have one in the north of Barbados, the products will be completely different after 2 years, just because of different winds and different aromas and the barrels. The barrels taking in some of the natural the aura of the local environment it will change the product.
Yeah.
And that again is part of the terroir of that particular
people
rum.
don't think about terroir as like the area where you age
or the age, the ground, and from the
3
ground.
years in the Caribbean versus 3 years in a Scottish aging warehouse. So
I mean, it's been proven so many times scientifically, and yes, it's romantic to talk about it, but the science is there. The angel share, for example, in Scotland, as you know, is 2 to 3% you're losing of your whiskey every year. If that same whiskey was aging in the Caribbean, especially in Jamaica, it's losing 6%. Which means it's aging or maturing or 3 times faster than it would do in a cooler climate. So of course, the environment of where it's aged is going to be add and contribute to the flavor profile or the chemistry of the product. So all these factors, these are things that all these rum guys have to think about when they're making their rums and where they age it.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, obviously, you know, location is super important. But I'm just trying to like pass out, because obviously you've got countries that can't grow sugarcane. You've got countries that can. Like, split them into those two categories, right? You've got countries like England, which make rum, or the UK in general make rum. A lot of North America makes rum, but they don't grow sugarcane.
In North America, they do,
in some parts of North America. I'm talking about, you know, like I lived in New York, for example, where they make sugarcane up in New York. There's no sugarcane in New York. Even if they could, the real estate would be insane.
That's true.
It'd be so expensive to grow sugarcane there. But I'm just thinking, like, you know, so obviously the molasses gets shipped in, and it has to be molasses. So they're never going to make rum agricole in England, because
not real agricole. What we are seeing now, and some people love it, some people hate it. They're the purists who say it's not real rum and that type of stuff is dehydrated sugarcane juice. So for the transportation, it's less weight because you're taking the water out, and then once it gets to wherever it's going, you add the water back in. So so I can understand the logic behind it. Whether purists agree with it, again, it's always going to be down to the person. The person that's making it is going to say, well, it makes sense to me. I'm saving money on transportation costs. I want cane juice, but I can't have a vacuum ISO what's called a 1,000 liter tank being shipped from one place to another place.
Yeah, where most of it's water. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, that's the whole point of distillation, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the whole idea behind distillation was that wine was too expensive to ship, so we turned it into brandy.
Yeah,
and then the plan was to turn it back into wine. It didn't work so well, so we just carried on distilling everything. Just developed our palates. And we just turned them into long drinks and add ice, and it's the whole thing, right?
But I mean, then you'll have then some people will say, well, if rum has to be a product of sugar cane, then it could be from anything from sugar cane, whether it's a byproduct or directly from sugar cane. Whatever you do to it after that, as long as it's from sugar cane, it still should be called rum. That's what some people would say. Again, I've even heard the argument where someone says, well, all rum then should be just cane juice. It should be just from the juice. Once you've taken sugar out of the juice, the crystals out of there, and you're left with the molasses, the byproduct, or that no longer should be called rum. I've heard that crazy story in our argument because, again, people are just trying to find ways to either debunk certain people's products. For me, the way I look at it is it has to come from sugarcane, and then I'm going to judge you about how it tastes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if yes, naturally, if you're fermenting sugarcane juice or you're fermenting molasses with some really good yeast, the bacteria and the flavor profiles you're creating in your beer, your wine, that's going to be absolutely beautiful for the blender, for the distiller. Yes, it might not smell that great at a particular time, but once you've distilled that and you've concentrated all those flavors, that baby sick that you may have smelt now turns into a beautiful pineapple.
Exactly.
And that's what you want. You want that characteristic. Now, it's a lot easier to do that with molasses, with syrup, sugarcane syrup or sugarcane juice, than it is with a dehydrated sugarcane crystal. Yeah. So again, if you're going to make your rum from dehydrated sugarcane juice, you've got a lot of work to do to get that aromatic. So if you want to make that sacrifice, then it's fine, not a problem. A lot of great rums I've tried from areas that don't actually grow sugarcane anymore have all come from molasses. They don't grow any because to import sugarcane juice, it starts to deteriorate straight away. Syrup's a lot easier. But most of the times that people are using syrup, they're doing it for themselves or doing it in small batches. But molasses travels.
Yeah, exactly.
It travels and it travels.
I think there's something beautiful about sugarcane juice. You know, when I think about sugarcane juice, and I'm like, I like that you can't get it somewhere else.
Yeah,
like
understand
it's
that.
like
Yeah,
it's like when
understand it. Yeah, makes
whenever I
perfect
go
sense.
to Mexico,
Makes
I
perfect
drink
sense.
pulque, for example.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of brands that try to can pulque and put it somewhere else, and it doesn't taste like pulque in Mexico. And I love that.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, you have to go to Mexico then.
Yeah,
Tough.
makes sense.
It is what it is.
Makes sense.
And it's like, if
Makes
you want
sense.
rum agricole, go to a French island or anywhere where they grow sugarcane where they're allowed to produce agricole. Get it from there. And when you taste it, you're like, I don't know, you get this feeling like I'm tasting the land. It's like when you drink a peaty whiskey.
Well, I perfectly agree. I fully agree.
You drink the earth. You're drinking the earth. You're tasting the terroir. Like terroir is a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
you know,
no, 100%.
You know?
And that's
I'm not a
what-
massive
that's-
wine guy, but terroir is beautiful.
And it's what makes a point of difference. Again, terroir and what the terroir brings to your liquid should be protected. That's another massive argument and another big fight in the rum game, where certain countries are fighting to protect their geography, get a geographical indication there. And some have them, but still not respected in places like Europe or in America, where they're sold into, but they are protected at home. And again, that boils back down to the fair trading. Why is it countries like Jamaica has a rich history in making rum, Jamaican rum? Why is it Jamaican rum is not protected in Europe? Yeah.
In what way is it not protected?
It's
Maybe
not
you can explain
protected. It's not protected as in the trademark Jamaica rum, which has been set in Jamaica. They define what Jamaica rum is and the rules and how it's made and what type of water you're allowed to use and where it's aged. That is all stated in the standards of identity of what makes a Jamaica rum. Now, once it gets sold into Europe, they should respect that and say, okay, Jamaica rum is what the Jamaicans say it is. So if anyone makes a rum in Europe, they cannot use the word Jamaica on the label. They can't make a Jamaican rum that's made in Shropshire as such. They can't do a Jamaican style rum because, again, that's an infringement of that trademark. Now, that is afforded to cognac. That is afforded to champagne. In fact, probably most of the things from France. That is afforded to the word rum agricole, which can only be used on products made in the departments of France and the autonomous region of Portugal, which is Madeira. So they're the only regions that are allowed to use rum agricole. So I couldn't do a Jamaican rum agricole because I'd be not only flouting two countries, I'll be sued because I'm using agricole and it can only be used in those areas. So that is protected, or that name or that style is protected, the same as Scotch whiskey is, the same as Irish whiskey is. But Jamaica rum isn't.
No.
So you can do a Jamaican style rum or have Jamaica on the label and your product was taken to France and they've added some sugar inside there and they've made it into a French rum, but they're still using the word Jamaica on there. That's a colonial model. That is, we take
or it was
from,
made in Puerto Rico.
Or it's made in Puerto Rico as such. So so that's the big fight that's happening in rum industry, to have the local terroir geography protected. So the value is created in the place where it's made. So when you sell it abroad, you can only get you know where it's come from. You know who made it. It has that flavor profile, as you said, because it's connected with the geography. If that's not there, then anyone can do anything they want, and it basically bastardizes the brand and it cheapens the actual name of the product. So rum actually, funny enough, actually has more protection in Europe than whiskey does. And a lot of people don't even realize that because in Europe, American whiskey is protected. You can't bourbon can only come from America. Scotch whiskey can only come from Scotland. Irish whiskey can only come from Ireland. Japanese whiskey is a gray area there at the moment. But in Europe,
you can't just have Japanese whiskey from anywhere, can you?
No, you can't have Japanese whiskey anyway. But there's a controversy about it started off in Scotland or it started in Canada. But that's changing now. But with rums, protected areas, as I said, Madeira, Guadeloupe, Martinique, or French Caribbean, Cuba. Cuba is penned in. Venezuela is penned in. Other areas that are protected.
So Cuban rums. If I make my if I make my rum in Puerto Rico, let's say, am I allowed to call myself a Cuban rum currently in the
UK, in Europe? Technically, yes. Yeah. Technically, you can have Cuba on the name. Cuba is part of the name to make people believe it's a Cuban style or Cuban rum. Once it goes through, where they recognize the GI, then any product that has the word Cuba on there or resembles Cuba has to come from Cuba. Has to follow the rules and regulations of making Cuban rums. At the moment, it's still pending. Same as with Venezuela. Guatemala has theirs because that was rushed through by a big company that had a big Guatemalan brand. So there is a standard identity in Europe recognized as Guatemalan rums. And so there are quite a few with rums, but the big islands, the big Caribbean, like Jamaica, Barbados. Barbados actually doesn't even have one locally. That's another big fight in the island of Barbados about a GI locally to protect Barbados rums from anyone coming in and making a product or taking Barbados rum to another country, doing what they want and still sell it as Barbados rum. There's nothing to protect Barbados distilleries from someone else doing that. So that's the big fight in rum. Why is it?
Is there some reason that it's the more British influenced islands that don't have the GIs, whereas the Spanish ones tend to?
Yeah, so, I don't know. There might be some conspiracy theory behind it. I'm not sure.
Let's start a conspiracy theory.
Some sort of conspiracy theory there. Yeah, the French.
They're all against us.
Yeah,
I blame Brexit.
Well, the French. The French islands, the French areas are still part of Europe. So.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Martinique and Guadeloupe are still part of Europe. So they're colonies.
Decolonized in different ways.
There you go. That's right.
Yeah, let's say like that.
With Guatemala, again, that was really instrumental by the big powerhouse of Diageo, who had the brand. So they really pushed that through. Venezuela, again, was doing really well with rums, and that was pushed through from several companies to fight for that. Same as with Cuba. They have a lot of big, massive companies behind them pushing and trying to fight for legislation to get their PGIs or the PDOs certified and recognized in Europe. But Jamaica, it's a shame because again, Jamaica at one stage was the leaders in the world when it came to rum or the style of rum and that type of stuff. And it almost seems like when they got independence in '62, they've lost a lot of their might or bargaining chips because they're no longer part of the empire as such. Barbados got independence as well a couple years later again, and now they're a republic actually. So maybe they've lost some of their bargaining chips. I couldn't pin it down, but again, could be conspiracy theories. But the only one of those countries that actually have a recognized GI, and that's very recent. It's actually the newest one is Guyana, and they have a GI based around Demerara. So Demerara rum has to come from Demerara. And depending on the age and that type of stuff, there are certain other things you're allowed to use on the label, like Grand Reserve and Reserva. I think if it's over a certain amount of years, it can only come from, it can only be aged and made in Guyana or the Demerara region. If it's young stuff, you can buy that bulk, use Guyana on the name or use Demerara on the name, but you can't use like Grand Reserve or Reserve and things like that. So that is quite hard to navigate for the general consumer. As soon as
how many distilleries are in Demerara now? It's very few. It's El Dorado, right?
One, that's it. The Diamond Distillery. Yeah, it's only one distillery. Again, sugar refineries, rum distilleries got closed down because it's no longer profitable. And there's only one. But the funny thing is, the most amazing thing about that distillery has equipment or stills from like 4 or 5 other distilleries that closed down. I always equate that to like Highlander. It's like they closed down the rival and took their power. So you got like the Port Morant and there, you got the Youth Lug inside there, you got the Enmore, all from different distilleries, but that still is unique and creates a flavor profile that was unique to that distillery, but now they're in one place, DDL.
So they can combine all of those styles together. Yeah, okay.
And again, that boils down to I can go there now, create my own version of a Demerara rum, and you can go there as well and create your own version by just different combinations of rums from different stills.
What about the US? Are the US and the EU different in terms of what GIs they recognize?
Yeah. The US don't recognize anything.
They just don't care.
They don't care.
Capitalism.
They're TTB. They're TTB. They're tobacco and the Trade and Tobacco Bureau, whatever it's called. And they don't care. It's like they don't even recognize champagne. Champagne for them is a style, not a region. In fact, I tell a lie. There are a few things. they've just legalized or just certified what cachaça is.
Yeah.
So cachaça for many years was sold as Brazilian rum, but now cachaça is legally cachaça in America, and it just falls now as a subcategory. It's the only cane spirit that has a subcategory. All the others are just thrown into one bracket.
Rum.
Yeah, just rum, which is again a shame. So when you look at the standards of identity in the TTB of what, for example, whiskey is, it says it's grain, has to be 80 proof, and see Scotland.
Yeah.
Scotland will tell us what Scotch whiskey is.
Yeah.
Ireland would tell the Americans what Irish whiskey is.
Yeah.
But when it comes to rums, they don't care what the Jamaicans say. They don't care what the Barbadians say. There's a lot of things they could do that would help the rum industry in America, or rums sold into America. But again, they don't respect that. Agricole, for example, although that's protected in Europe, it's not protected in America. So you can do a Hawaiian or a Californian rum agricole and sell it without worrying about it. Just like you can do a Californian champagne and not worry about it.
Yeah. Is there sugar cane in California?
I don't think there is. There's definitely loads in Hawaii.
Enough, right? It's not
definitely loads in Hawaii. Loads in Louisiana. So we've seen a lot of Louisiana rums. Loads in Florida.
So humid
as well. Yeah. So
I suppose Florida, right?
Yeah, Florida. There's lots of sugarcane growing in Florida, so you've seen a lot of Florida rums. But yeah, it's America. Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, you have to fight to your right to party out there.
Yeah. Like let's say if you could wave the Ian Burrell magic wand and you could say, okay, like rum agricole gets its historical GI because they're the people who've been making it for hundreds of years, but there's still potential for good sugarcane juice base rum to come from Florida or Hawaii or wherever. Like what would you want? Would you want it to be a different product? You like, yes, make it, but make sure that people know that it's not rum agricole.
It's a good question, only because there are some amazing agricole style rums made outside the French colonies and outside Madeira.
Chalon
Bay in Phuket, and Australia, actually, fun enough, there's a company down there called Husk that's just trademarked the word Australian craft rum, ACR.
Oh yeah,
and they've just trademarked it because in Australia, to be a rum, you have to be aged for a minimum of 2 years. So any form of agricole couldn't legally be sold as rum in Australia because it's unaged.
All agricole is unaged.
So not all agricole unaged, but the Blanc stuff was all unaged, so they couldn't sell anything.
There's a St. James.
You have to age it for several amount of years. So, but they wanted to create rums that really showcase the terroir. So they wanted to create white rums. So they've registered a trademark. They created a trademark. They've set up a list of parameters of why there should be an authentic, I call it authentic, Australian craft rum. They got these scientists to talk about the terroir and this and that, and the government loved it and they bought into it. So this is a new trademark, and you can use, although it's only one company using it, you can use ACR on the label if it's from sugarcane from one particular region, which is down in Queensland where all the sugarcane is growing, and then you make your rum in a certain way and that type of stuff, which I like the idea, and that's all agricole rums. They don't use the word agricole on there, but they could use the word agricole because, again, agricole is not respected in Australia as such. I think for the general
but at least
consumer,
that's the thing as well. Like, you actually do get, apart from the laws, you get people in the industry who just respect where their products come from, and they refrain from using the word agricole because they're like, okay, we're making a sugarcane rum. Agricole is French islands, so so there's like kind of a unwritten rules, I guess.
Well, Mauritius, there's several rums from Mauritius, and they were part of France and England as well at one stage, and they were selling rums into Europe recently, as in like 5-6 years ago, and they had agricole on the label, and they had to be told take that off the label. So they've changed now. They put cane juice rum or cane rum or cane spirit. These are some of the terms that's being used. Virgin cane spirit is another one that gets used. So there are ways for people to actually get that message across to the consumer.
Virgin sounds non-alcoholic though.
Yeah, that's true. I know it doesn't. Yeah, it's
Like,
true.
it
It
sounds
doesn't.
tricky. Yeah,
No, it does. Yeah, when you think of virgin cocktails.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are ways of getting that message across. But again, it's about the education. How many general consumers know what a rum agricole is? They wouldn't. Most of them wouldn't. So do you have a term that everyone's going to understand? Do you have a term that only a certain region can use? It's hard. It's hard to actually find the right answer there. I mean, yes, it would be nice if every single rum made from 100% cane sugar juice was called a rum agricole, and then you then spoke about where it was made. So it'd be Martinique rum agricole, it'd be Madeira rum agricole, it'd be Australian rum agricole, or agricultural rum. Or I think in Madeira they call it agricola as well. So you're using the word agricole to talk about it's a different style. But again, no one has the right answer for that. I mean, even where the word agricole came from, it didn't even come from the style of rum. It just came from where the rum was made. You made in an agricultural region, and you made your rum from cane juice because you didn't sell sugar. So you got your cane, you crushed it in France, Martinique, and you made rum from there. Or you'd get your cane juice, you'd make sugar, and then you'd sell your sugar, and then you'd send your molasses into the big industrial rum producer in the center of town, and they would make rum from that. Yeah. And that's why it was called industrial rum, because he sold it into the industrial thing. So it wasn't about the style of rum, it was about where it was made, either in the agricultural areas or it was the industrial city center as such. So yeah, it's hard to actually pinpoint that. And then you also have to throw in what we're seeing now from reputable rum producers that are known for making molasses rum. They're using cane juice in their blends or making cane juice rums. But someone like Richard Seale from Foursquare, when he makes cane juice rum, which he does now, people say, oh, you're making an agricole. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm making Barbados rum. Because for years, we made rum this way. And we didn't call it agricole because there's no such thing as agricole. We called it Barbados rum.
Okay.
It's still from sugar cane, but we're just making it from juice.
Okay, 100% juice.
100% juice. So he's making rums from 100% juice and mixing that with rums made from molasses. Or he's using some of the juice, like they do in Hamden, using some of the juice as part of the ingredients for the fermentation, and creating a rum that's based from molasses juice or like a sour juice, like a vinegar, and then your other components in there. It all boils down to what sugar cane you've used, how it's come from the sugar cane, and then the end result. So whether it's from cane, whether it's from molasses, it's about the taste. Because I could give you 5 different rums made from cane juice, and you would know they were you would know they were agricole or agricultural.
Because I suppose you could lose a lot of those grassy, herbal, floral notes.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Seb.
Yeah, you could do.
Amazing. Based on how long you ferment, how aggressively you ferment, how you distill.
Correct. How you distill, the length of time they distill. So I'm just piling them up there. The length of time you distill for. You're right. There's so many different things you can do to that raw product, through distillation, through fermentation, through aging, through barrels, blending, that make it taste completely different from another product. And again, it doesn't taste like the stereotypical agricole rums that we're used to from, say, Martinique.
Yeah. Why is it, like, give us the brief history, the 2-minute history on why agricoles are predominantly from French Caribbean islands?
Lots of different reasons there. The easiest way to define it was necessity. A lot of rums were made in certain ways because of necessity or because of the restrictions. So when the English and the French were fighting each other in the Caribbean, people fought for trade routes. Sugar, naturally, and rum were a massive draw for everyone because it was the economy and the money that he brought in. But also France owned the wine game as well. So one thing you don't want your colonies making this rum out there when they should be drinking brandy. They should be drinking French wine. You're not making any money from this if they're making rum and drinking it themselves. So the colonies like Martinique and Guadeloupe were banned through periods of the 1800s from making rum legally. So it was all driven underground. Coupled with that, they couldn't sell their sugar to America or to other parts of the English Caribbean because the war between England and France. So again, if you've got an estate and you've got all this sugar growing and you used to make sugar, make money, make rum from the leftovers, make money. Now you've only got cane you just make rum from there and you drink it locally. So that was one of the reasons why the French Caribbean started drinking rums made from cane juice, because there was no reason to go to the sugar stage and then make rum from the molasses. There was no way to sell the molasses. There were other things like Napoleon, the various different Napoleons, restricting or basically didn't want to rely on the Caribbean making their sugar. So they started perfecting sugar from sugar beet.
Yeah.
They got scientists and they got chemists to work on extracting sugar from sugar beet. So then they started getting sugar from sugar beet, and they're like, well, we don't need your sugar in the Caribbean anymore. So you're like, well, I can't sell my sugar to you either. I better just carry on making rum for myself through juice. And then again, you got in trouble for doing that as well. So it was driven underground for many years, but it was all from juice because there was no reason to go to molasses until a nice little tiny bug came about in France called phylloxera. That pretty much, I'd say nice. Don't hate me if you're a wine drinker or a brandy drinker. That devastated the vines, of course, in France. So, of course, they were like, we're losing all our brandy. We need more drinks. Oh, guys, in the Caribbean, we're making that rum thing that we banned them from doing. We're charging more tax. So then they up the game of making rums. But because they're already making rum from juice, they continue making their rums from juice. Some molasses as well. In fact, a lot of molasses. But they started making rums from juice and molasses and selling it into France to basically subsidize the brandy that they weren't getting anymore. So rum in the French Caribbean has had its ups and downs, but cane juice really came about just because of the fact that they couldn't sell sugar to the colonies, the British colonies, couldn't sell sugar to the Americas. So they just made rum from juice.
Yeah, and I suppose it's like most small distilleries a couple of hundred years ago, going back to maybe 400 or 500 years ago, they had distilleries. They were primarily a farm that produced X, and they had a still there because sugarcane doesn't last forever, grain doesn't last forever, apples don't last forever, grapes don't last forever, and they just distill whatever they've got left because that's, locking it up and, okay, well, at least we've got this, instead of the grain going bad, at least we've got this thing which lasts forever, which is where you get.
Well, it didn't last forever because they realized it was tasty. It was tasty, so they drank it.
It goes to use. It doesn't spoil. It goes to spoil. Speaking of drinking, what are we drinking now?
Oh, we got the cocktail for rock and rollers. They say the Piña Colada.
Is it for rock and rollers?
That's what I've been told. It's like all the rock and rollers love a Piña Colada, especially when it's served in a pineapple, whole pineapple. So I love a Piña Colada. It's I think it's one of my guilty pleasures as such, and I think Piña Colada as a rum cocktail really encompasses some of the reasons why rum is so popular, because people make that emotional connection to the tropics and holidays and good times and have a smile on their face. I don't really see people who have smiles on their face when they're drinking vodka martinis. So it's Piña Colada is like the opposite of that. People think it's Piña Colada. It's got a #1 hit song called Escape. I think his name was Rupert Everett or Rupert Holmes. I think it's Rupert Holmes singing that song, and everyone sings the Piña Colada song.
Like Piña
That's it. And getting caught in the rain. So you're
Are we allowed to sing? Are we allowed to sing?
I have no idea.
Under 5 seconds.
So it's one of those drinks that, especially when it's made well, like this one. Oh, very nice.
Right.
It's just tasty. It's just makes you feel good. As such, I very rarely have anyone in the bars all the years I've been working that's come and asked for a Piña Colada and not had a good time that night, or looking to have a good time because they want to have fun. You don't go out to a bar to have a bad experience. You go out there to have a good experience.
Yeah.
So when you make a Piña Colada, the smiles on people's faces. So I love making Piña Coladas. I also love the way that the bartenders have now, because it's one of the most replicable flavor or aromas out there. There are soaps, there are essences, there is incense, there's even condoms. There are flavored, apparently, flavored Piña Coladas.
I never saw the point, honestly, but
I don't see the point. There. But that it's one of those flavors people recognize. Coconut,
guess there's
pineapple.
A market.
That's it. Coconut and pineapple and that type of stuff. So, but I love seeing bartenders now create twists on Piña Colada, their version. So clarified Piña Coladas. I love a clarified Piña Colada. All the molecular stuff they're doing and that type of stuff, just to, again, capture that tropical essence of the cocktail, but then give it a modern twist as such, because the Piña Colada has evolved over the years. If you go back into history and look at the history books of where Piña Colada first was mentioned, I think it was like 1924 in an old travel magazine called Travel Magazine, funny enough, during Prohibition. A writer was talking about the best drink or the most popular drink they drink in Cuba at the moment is a drink called a Piña Colada. And when he put the recipe down, you're like, there's no coconut in there. It was like pineapple, Bacardi, lime, sugar. It was a pineapple daiquiri. But Piña Colada means shaved pineapple, so they obviously shaved out the pineapple, shook it up with some lime and some rum and some ice and sugar, and that was a Piña Colada. The modern Piña Colada, which is what people associate the drink with, came around about the 1950s, and that was in Puerto Rico, where several bartenders claimed the drink or the recipe or to have created the drink, but most historians agree that it would be Ramon Monchito Marrero that shaved out a pineapple because he wanted to serve his coconut rum drink in a different way, because there was a strike and he couldn't serve it in a coconut, put it in a pineapple, and it really got the flavor of the pineapple mixing with the coconut rum or coconut cream and rum, and then serve that drink, and that became the Piña Colada. Around that time, there was a doctor who was working on a way of preserving cream of coconut, and Dr. Lopez, and created the Lopez, the Coca Lopez. So again, that then started being used in the Piña Coladas in Puerto Rico. And the rest is history. That became the modern Piña Colada. And next thing you know, Ramon's getting a color TV for selling 1 million Moscow Piña Coladas. He's getting rewards. He's become a celebrity because it became the drink of Puerto Rico, which it now is. And it's made places like the Carib Hilton Hotel in Old San Juan a destination for everyone that wants to go to all these places where cocktails like this have been created. So I love the Piña Colada. There's so much to talk about with this, and it's a great drink. Great drink too.
Yeah, I think the fat content in a Piña Colada, you know, like I just love, like you know, it's so. I don't know. It just makes you feel so like loved. It's like it's looking after you.
It's a comfort drink.
It's such a comfort drink.
It's a comfort drink. But you got skinny coladas as well.
Yeah, but you don't want a skinny colada.
I've done skinny coladas. I've had to succumb to the pressures of the consumer, because you have to drink stuff for consumers. So you have someone saying. That's someone throwing something at you there. You have someone saying to, oh yeah, I love a Piña Colada, but you're right, it's got too much cream, or it's too heavy, it's this. I can make a skinny colada for you. Like, really? I'll make a skinny colada. And then you make a skinny colada. It's probably not that much less calories in there, but the mindset is it's not as creamy, it's much more light inside there. I mean, I used to make a colada called a Coca Colada, which all it was really good coconut rum. My favorite at that time was a Coca Canoe made by Appleton. Fresh pineapple juice. Give it a really good shake, and as you know, when we shake pineapple, it creates that little froth as it breaks up. And just sprinkle a little bit of nutmeg on there. Bam, that was it. Beautiful tasting drink, because it was creamy. The rum was good. You got the coconut inside there, but yeah, it's pretty much 3 ingredients, not including the ice. But yeah, less calories than having a cream of coconut inside there. So there were ways of doing skinny coladas that were tasty. But again, you're playing on the essence of coconut, pineapple, and rum.
Yeah. But go all in, I say.
Go all in, go all in.
If
get the cream in there.
Colada,
yeah, you have to do it properly. Yeah,
get it all in there.
I agree.
I was in Costa Rica with some friends, and we were literally just making Piña Coladas. Fresh coconuts, fresh pineapple, rum, bit of lime, everything's fresh, and we're just chucking it all in a blender with ice. Just like no liquid, like just everything's going in, blend it all up, and
that's it.
It's like the best Piña Colada you've ever had.
Natural Piña Colada, and when it's in its natural sense like that, it's an amazing tasting drink. It's one of those drinks that does capture the tropics. As you know, coconut's always associated with tropics. The pineapple's always there as well. That symbol of welcome. Mixing those together. That's why I love the history and the story of the Piña Colada. I do actually the seminar on the history of the Piña Colada. I talk about it from the days of people in Cuba drinking a cocktail called Saoco, which is just coconut water and rum. And we drink a lot of that in the Caribbean, coconut water and rum. And the way I talk about the story, it's that drink taking that journey through time, and things are being added to it. Where did ice come from? And I talk about ships coming out from New England where they've taken sheets of ice and put that in a ship with salt around there and then take it to the Caribbean to sell it into ice houses. I talk about that's where the ice has come from. I talk about where did the pineapple come from because, where did coconut come from? Because the coconut was there with a rum and coconut, but were there pineapple and rum drinks, and talk about like Stiggins Fancy and Samuel Pepys, and talking about rum and pineapple because pineapple was infused in a lot of rums to actually add flavor, or also just to create a different product. So I then talk about that, and then basically how they all meet in certain places and certain moments of time, and then you end up in the 50s with modern day Piña Colada. So it's a really nice, fun seminar. That journey of the Piña Colada as such. But also along the way, there are lots of different drinks and different references for people to say, "Wow, I didn't realize that. Well, I didn't know that."
I suppose it's been a preservation method at some point as well, right? You can preserve
preserving cream or
preserving pineapple in rum or whatever. People use vinegar and spirits for a long time.
Of course, for the shrubs and that lot.
You get your shrubs. Yeah, for sure. But the ice industry is a crazy one as well. It's so interesting.
Yeah,
ice was just shipped around the world. Just
I know, imagine it.
It's like I'll just bring you some ice from Boston to Calcutta.
Exactly.
You're like,
in a ship.
What? Isn't it going to melt?
Yeah.
No worries.
Some of it will.
We'll figure it out. Yeah. Just 80% of the product.
It reminds me of there was one of my favorite movies. Was a movie called Brewster's Million. With Richard Pryor.
Is that where he has to sell all he has to spend as much as money as possible?
$30 million and have nothing at the end of it. And he can't own anything or anything like that. And this guy said, "I can help you out," and he buys an iceberg and sends it to the Middle East because he's thinking, well, if I buy an iceberg for 1.5 million, by the time it gets to the Middle East, it's gonna be water. I've just lost 1.5 million. Yes. He sent it out there, but because it's a drought and that type of stuff, by the time it got there, it melted, but then they used the water to irrigate some land, and the guy that owned the place was this massive sheikh, and he gave him 5 million for that water. So he'd made a 3.5 million profit.
I remember the scene.
And he was like, made a profit.
He's trying to lose money.
He's trying to lose money. It's like, whose stupid idea was it to send an iceberg to the Middle East to lose money?
That's a good movie, that. I'm going to watch that again.
Great movie, yeah.
So what about, because we spoke about GIs, and I know you talk about categories of rum in locations rather than what's quite often written on the bottle, So I want to ask you about about the names that are written on the bottle. What do they mean? And why should we be using cultural countries more than the names on the bottle? Because you got what have you got? You got gold, dark.
Color,
white, silver,
plata, So I mean, the thing is, when we talk about rums with color, it basically means it's meaningless in many ways. There are times where it does have a point. Some of them are culturally connected. So in Jamaica, when we say white rum, we don't mean a rum that is white. We mean one particular rum. It's the biggest selling rum in Jamaica. It accounts for 90% of all rum sold there, and it's Ray & Nephew overproof because it's a white rum. So we call it white rum because that's the rum. It's so culturally, we've always called it white rum. And this is one of the reasons why some of the other white rums that are less strength, that were like 40% alcohol or 43% alcohol, that were white rums, they had to pick up quarter themselves other names because they couldn't put white rum on a label because they weren't the Ray & Nephew overproof as such. And that basically, that's pretty much the same as when you go into a bar and you see a menu and you see rums listed as white rums. And when you look at the rums on there, they are all completely different. And the only thing they have in common is that they're water white or transparent as such. But a rum from Jamaica that is a white rum, that is 63% alcohol. That's a blend of pot and column still. That has a long fermentation, really big and funky. It's completely different from a white rum from Puerto Rico that by law has to be aged for a minimum of 1 year in wood to get color, then filtered through charcoal, comes off a multi-column still that's really light and subtle, but they're both white rums. But how can you put that in the same category when the only thing they have in common is how they look? It's like putting white wines in one category and saying, they're all the same. Chardonnay is the same as the Sauvignon Blanc, which is the same as Pinot Grigio. They're all different grapes. They're all different flavors inside there. So you categorizing rum by color for me is meaningless unless you precede it with the place of origin. because then that says a little bit more. So if it says Jamaican white rum, you're now thinking, oh, it must be really big and heavy. It may not be, but you may be thinking it's big and heavy and overproof like a Jamaican rum, or it's going to be funky. If it says Puerto Rican white rum, you're now probably thinking of the Bacardis of the world or the Don Qs of the world. It's going to be much more lighter. It says Cuban white rum, and you've tasted Cuban rum, so you know it's going to have a little bit of dryness inside there. Again, if you know about the stills, you're going to be thinking it's multi-column still, but you're now saying to yourself, well, it's going to have a little bit of earthiness. It's different from Puerto Rico. So by proceeding with the place of origin, it gives it a point of reference.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to start. If we start there, then you can peel away the layers and go into complexities of if it's pot still or column still and things like that. So that's the reason why I find color meaningless. The other thing is you call a rum a dark rum. Now, what's the definition of a dark rum? Because I've seen some rums that are gold and they've called them dark. And I've seen some rums that are gold and are much lighter than the dark rums. So darkness, again, it depends on the barrels you've used, how long you've aged it, or how much caramel you've added to it.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and I've seen some unaged rums, where they've added caramel to it. And they're unaged, they've added caramel to it, which I'm not a massive fan of. But they've sold it as dark rums or black rums. Yes, they're dark and they're black, but it doesn't say anything else about the rum. It's just about color. There's no age on there.
Yeah.
So I find the color part meaningless unless it's culturally connected to the actual region or the place. So yes, you'll see silver, because silver in a lot of the Latin countries was the opposite or a different type of gold. You got silver and you got gold. Yeah, as your names of your rums, as such.
Same with tequila, right?
Yeah, same as tequila.
Yeah, you see that a lot.
As such, so.
Yeah.
But then, again, I still think you have to then proceed that with the place of origin. Because rum is always, people have always been trying to categorize rums or classify rums. And we've had the really geeky classifications where they talk about the stills. So you've had like rums that are made from the 100% pot still, made in one single distillery with old techniques. And some people call them single rums, like a single malt. And then you have rums that will have a column still, a traditional column still, and pot still on a single distillery. And they're blends of both, and they've called themselves single blended. Then you have traditional rums that use traditional column still, whether it be a twin column or a four columns, but not a multi-column still. Or they're using traditional Creole stills, which normally legally has to be used to make agricole rums in Martinique. These are special stills really made for making rum from cane juice. Is that traditional? Or
what does a Creole still look like?
Creole stills are normally a single column.
Yeah.
And the rectification, instead of being in another column to analyze and then rectify, instead of being two columns like a traditional coffee still, it's one column. Okay. So it's just done in one swoop.
So like a pot at the bottom?
No, it's
it continuous?
No, it's continuous. It's continuous, but the feed goes in. The feed goes in the middle as opposed to the top. So the wash goes into the middle. As it drops down, the steam then rises. It strips away the alcohol, and then it starts to condense and be rectified as it goes up to the top into the receiver when it comes out of the column. Where with a traditional coffee still, going one column from the top, going all the way back up to the top with the steam, then going to the next column to be analyzed, to be rectified, and then cool down into your rum. But the column, the Creole column still as well, is also fatter, because the plates in there work really well, or have been basically made for cane juice rums, as opposed to molasses-based rums. So and that's part of the law in Martinique rums or AOC rums, that you have to use a Creole still.
What ABV are they going to be pulling it off at?
Anywhere between 70 and 75 legally.
A bit lower than your traditional coffee still.
Traditional coffee still will come out like a 88, 90, 93, sorry. And then multi-column stills, you can make vodka from there. So anything goes anything over anything over 96 legally can't be called rum globally. It's now vodka.
Pretty much anything apart from vodka, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or gin. You need vodka to start with. So there's lots of different ways of defining that. You're really going to smash that on.
Yeah, I've already broken it, look. It's gone.
That's that Piña Colada effect. You're partying.
But it sticks to me. I'm going to turn it upside down and pretend it's like Look at that. It works better like that.
There you go.
Maybe that's the correct design. Yeah. Okay. So you're let's wave your wand again. You're the Ian Burrell magic wand. Like we do location first, right? Yeah. So let's say we're gonna categorize rums. We're gonna do location first. And then I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but rather than categorize by color, would you know, because you don't know whether dark comes from wood or whether it comes from caramel. So would you not just want to say how much it's aged, or whether it's a Jamaican aged rum or a Barbados aged rum?
I like that. And some do that. Use the word age. Yeah. I'll check that. But no, a lot of them do have the word age on there. Again, the only thing with age when it comes to marketing, because you're always looking at who's your target audience. Some audience, they naturally believe if something's darker, it's aged longer. And we know that's not the case, because you can add caramel, or barrels can be, they can give a lot more color than other barrels. Yeah. Smaller barrels will give more color than larger barrels, for example. Newer barrels will give more color than that. So again, consumers are confused that way. The other thing that consumers are misled by are labels that will have an age statement on there that is not the minimum age. Now, that is law in a lot of countries. There's law in Jamaica, Barbados. In fact, Barbados, let me just double check, may not be, should be, but definitely in Jamaica, Martinique, Cuba, Puerto Rico. The age on the label of the product is the youngest in the blend, same as Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey. But in
pretty much globally.
Yeah. But there are some regions that have slightly flouted those laws. I think one of the guilty regions has been Central America over the years when it comes to rums, where it's either a combination of maybe feeling inferior to other products out there, maybe thinking that, well, we've aged our product for a long time and we're losing a lot through evaporation, so we need to slow down the aging by doing things like using Solera as a blend, where you're blending older products with older products with younger products in a tiered system, and that tier system will help the older products to educate the younger product to give it flavor. But by doing that, if you're going to call your rum, if you're educating a 5-year-old rum with a 10-year-old rum, and it's now tasting very similar to a 10-year-old rum, you feel in your mind, oh, I'm disrespecting my 10-year-old. And I still want to call it 10 because I've just used expensive 10 inside there. So I'm going to call it 10 Solera, even though a majority of it may be 5 inside there. And that's the system that's used and accepted in certain Central American countries when they use Solera age statements. Yeah. So you'll have a 10-year-old or 15-year-old or 20-year-old Solera, and maybe 5% of it may be that age. So they're aging up to a certain number. Now it's confusing for consumers because they see a 20 on the label and they think it's 20 years old, when really it's up to 20. Where if they know it's a Jamaican rum and they see 20 on the label, because they know the rules in Jamaica, they know it's a minimum 20. And that's why the point of origin is important. Once you want to further your education, your knowledge on the spirit, to understand the rules of that region. And another example I use to clarify this is I always ask a group of whiskey drinkers, Scotch whiskey drinkers, if you see 15 on the label of a Scotch whiskey, what does that mean? And most of them know it's 15 years old, 15 years old. They might even say the youngest is 15, they say it's 15 years old because they automatically default to that. I then say to them, what does single malt Scotch whiskey mean? And they're like, most of them just can't tell you. But what they do say is, it means quality, it's consistency, and that type of stuff. Because the Scotch Malt Whiskey Association makes sure that these rules are set in place to create consistency, quality, so it creates that intrinsic value for the consumer. So they know if it's 15, it's 15 years old. That's what Jamaican rum drinkers should be thinking as well. You see 15 on a Jamaican rum, you know it's 15 years old. You know it's been aged in Jamaica. It's this way. Can't honestly say that about rums from, say, no disrespect, Guatemala. Because they have the Solera system in there. So you don't know if it's 23 years old. You don't know if it's 20 years old or 15 years old. You don't know how much of that is inside there. That's why the point of origin is important, because if I buy a Guatemalan rum, I'm not expecting to pay the same type of money as I expect to pay for the same age for a Jamaican rum. Because I know that
age doesn't mean the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, the Guatemala rum might taste better. I'm not saying it's going to taste better than Jamaican rum. It might taste better, but I want to know what I'm paying for. As such, and that's why I think the point of origin is important. And then age claims and age statements. For me, if I was waving that magic wand, you said any age reference on a bottle has to be the minimum, regardless of which country you're from, anywhere in the world. It has to be the youngest that this product is spent in wood. And in sizable barrels.
How do you not restrict people then in, like, let's say for a Solera system, and maybe we should explain what Solera is in a second, but you know, like when you've got Solera, you could be running a Solera, like some sherries have been running Solera for 200 years.
200 years.
And there's 200-year-old sherries in there. Theoretically, no one really knows, because when you draw off...
No, it should be if they are doing it right.
If they're doing it right, there should be 200-year-old sherries in there.
Because what you do is you draw off all your Solera products are coming from the bottom. And a third of that goes into the bottle. A third of that should go back into the top. It's your mother sherry or your mother rum. And then you add your new stuff in there. So they should be, in theory, every year it should be getting older and older. But there is no way there's no way you can actually put an age claim on there.
No.
Solera blending for me is
because the older stuff is always also reducing in volume.
Always reducing in volume. Yeah, correct. 100% is always reducing volume.
But if you put the minimum on there, are you not like not paying respect to the 200-year-old sherry? Like, let's say you go minimum.
Correct. No,
I say, okay,
I agree.
The youngest in there is actually 5 years old, but there's also 200-year-old. I
agree.
In there.
And the way to alleviate that?
Yes.
No age statement.
Just put Solera.
Solera, that's it.
Great
Solera,
rum.
for me, Solera age statements are bullshit.
Yeah.
For me, Solera age statement. There's only one product I've ever seen where the Solera age statement, has been legit. And you know what's really funny? It comes from Scotland. There's a Glenfiddich.
Yeah, there's a Glenfiddich,
15 Solera.
Yeah.
The liquid in there has spent 15 years in their Solera system.
Yeah.
That's minimum. That's the only one I've respected.
I know. I tasted it from the blending vat before it went in the bottle.
Oh, there you go.
So, it was incredible.
Yeah, it's a great tasting product. But because it's Scotland, that it spent 15 years in Solera. There's no product in there that's younger than 15.
A lot of it was more than 15.
Yeah, of course, 100%. But the youngest in there is 15. It just uses a Solera system to blend. There are brands out there that don't use the words age claim. Santa Teresa is one of my favorite rums from Venezuela. They use a Solera system. They could put 35 if they wanted to, because that's some of the oldest rums they've got in there, they say. But they don't. They use Solera as a blend to create their product because it's consistent. Don Q use a Solera system, and they use as part of their rums. They make great Puerto Rican rum. Again, they don't mention age claims on that particular product. And any age claim they do use, that's the youngest in the blend inside there. So for me, Solera blending or aging, whatever we want to call it, is a great way to create consistent product and tasty product. Solera age claims are bullshit for me.
I agree with that. Maybe you can say, just to educate the consumers, age through Solera for generations or something.
For generations.
You can say, this has been happening. We've been doing this for a long time. We age through Solera.
You know another rum company that does it well? Mention Solera? Dos Madeiras. They do it well. They call their product 5+5. My maths is not great, but 5+5 means 5+5 is 10. How long is that rum? What's the youngest rum in that blend? 10 years old. The youngest rum is 10 because they put a 3-year-old rum in their Solera system for 2 years. To be a 5-year-old for 3 years to create their 5+3. And then they age that rum for a further 2 more years within their Solera system to create a 5+5. But they do the pictures on the bottle or on the package. You can see how the Solera system works. But that's just simple. We use a 5-year-old rum that start off with 5-year rum. We put it through our system. It takes 3 years to go through our system. So 5+3 is 8. It's an 8-year-old. Bam. Then we take it and put it into another set of barrels for another 2 more years to create a different rum, which you call 5+5. Bam. No, there's the transparency. They're not lying about their age. They're using the Solera system. I mean, some critics might say, it's a bit too sweet. It's got this amount of sugar in, blah, blah, but they're creating their own style of rum. And they don't call it Guyanese rum. They don't call it Barbados rum, because that's where they get their rums from. They call it rums from Jerez. They call it Spanish rum. I love the brand because they're transparent and they just say, this is what we're doing. We're not lying. We're not trying to deceive anyone. we don't make our own rum, so we buy rums in that are quality, and we put it for our cellar system because that's what we do. We make brandies, we make sherry, we make all the casks for Macallan, if you like your Macallans.
Yeah.
So we do all those, and we put our rum through that system. There's no gray area when it comes to a product like that, and no hater can not respect that. But they can disrespect a company that may put a number on the bottle when it doesn't represent the youngest product in the blend.
Yeah, and you can see, you can see it in the branding, and it can be subtle but obvious at the same time. That like, hey, you're trying to tell me that this is, I'm not going to say a number, but X number of years old. Yeah,
talking about Michael Jordan now. Aren't we?
yeah, exactly. So that's a crazy area.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Let's pivot to your book, man.
Oh, right,
I want to hear about your book.
Oh, the book, my first book ever.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So how was that? What's it like? What's it like to write a book? And
wow. You know what?
What's the name of it? And then what is it about?
Well, it's called Rum, a Tasting Course.
Yeah.
And it's a tasting course. I just want to get people tasting rums and formulating their own opinions on the different types of rums out there. In the book, I actually taste 100 different rums. And we create like a little taste map or taste graph on there to talk about if rums are taste sweet or spicy or woody or fruity and that type of thing. Then I do a little description on the distillery or the place, that the brand itself. And then we also then talk about the history of rum, a little tot on the history. So I talk about the journey rum is made, but I also talk about the pre-journey before rum was called rum. Or when it was cane spirits, or when it was different names like aguardiente and cachaça and things like that. So I talk about the relations to rum, the cousins of rum as well. But I also talk about rum from a cultural perspective, which you don't really see in any of the rum books, where they don't talk about what rum really means to the cultures that make rum, the stories behind that. Also, some of the local names that are given to spirits that we Eurocentrically call rum. And I say Eurocentrically as well as American-centric, because I think sometimes we have this laziness as Europeans or as Americans to look at products from other countries and just pigeonhole it, as opposed to asking, well, what do you guys call it? Oh, and why do you call it that? Oh, okay, I like that. Prime example, something like Charanda from Mexico. Charanda is a cane spirit made exactly the same as rum, pretty much. Actually, very similar to another cane spirit called Clarin from Haiti. Made it very similar to rum, but because of local traditions and how they make it, it is unique to that particular area. So it's because it's unique to that area, it is called the name of the product by the people who make it. So the Haitians call their version or their style of rum Clarin or Clarin, and then the Mexicans call their one Charanda from Michoacan.
I have to say, I've brought Charanda back from Mexico, and when someone asked me what is Charanda, I just said Mexican rum.
No, but I understand. But that's perfectly understandable. No, because it's easy to default to that. It's very easy to default to that. But what then you can do after that is then say, but in Mexico, they call this Charanda because it is the local spirit of that particular area. Yeah. Because this is exactly
so good. Charanda.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. It's very earthy, and it is that link between rum and mezcal for me. But it's the same as with cachaça. For years, people sold that in as Brazilian rum just because we didn't give the Brazilians respect for their own product, for the name that they gave it. Yeah. Now, I say America is one of the only ones that have actually now said, right, legally it's called cachaça inside there as opposed to rum, because they have their rules, their regulations, they have their history behind the actual product. So I highlight some of these cane spirits because they're cousins or relations to rum. I highlight some of those from around the world, and things like Vichy from Colombia, Grog from West Africa, from Côte d'Ivoire, and places like that. So it's a really nice read, and it's got some great graphics inside there to make it really simple. I talk about some classic rum cocktails and recipes inside there. Now the recipes in there are just guidelines. I always say recipes are not the be or end all. Give them a tweak to do them in the way you want to do them. They're just guidelines, but it's really nice graphics in there of how to make these classic cocktails like the Jungle Bird and the Piña Colada. And I also talk about a little bit of history. I have like 3 points of history connected to each of the cocktails, just so there'll be conversation pieces and like when you're having a dinner party or chatting with your friends. So, oh, did you know that the Jungle Bird was created in the Hilton Hotel in 1978 by a bartender named, I don't know, something, Joseph Ong or something. I think that was his name. I can't remember his name. And it uses Campari, which is not really used much in the tropical cocktail world. So it's a really nice, easy read, learning about the history of rum, learning about how rum is perceived around the world. I talk about rum from 7 areas: North America, South America, Caribbean, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Did I miss one out? Antarctica.
That was 6. Antarctica.
I don't talk about Antarctica. I should do. I do mention. I do mention Antarctica in there because I did bring some rum down there. But no, I mean the 6 continents and then Caribbean, its own separate region as such, because there are rums from all over the world. So I do talk about rums from all over the world because I want this to be a world book. As I said, being a global ambassador for rum, you do travel around to all these different places and share stories with many, many bartenders. And I want every bartender I know that loves rum, that wants to learn a little bit more about rum or wants key information about rum on how to define the styles of rum, to have that book at hand. And if you're just a general consumer who loves rum as well, it's a nice little coffee table type book you can have at home and use it as a reference. Someone might bring a rum like you mentioned, Chalon Bay from Phuket, and you're like, oh, that was in that book, and you read about it and it tells you how it was made, where it was made, what make that gives it that point of difference as well. So you got some reference to what you're drinking, and then it's down to you to decide if it tastes good. And again, I'm there to help. I put flavor profiles of what you expect from rum. We've got things in there like how barrels work on rum, the different types of barrels that you use, whether it's sherry cask, Calvados, to American oak, French oak, once used bourbon, once used cognac. We talk about all those different types of barrels. Talk about charring. What does charring do to a barrel, from light toast to alligator skin? What type of flavor profiles that brings to a spirit? So we've got all of those in there. And again, with really beautiful imagery inside it that I didn't do, but my publishers actually worked on and wrote. So very excited about the book, and very excited to do tours as well, doing book tasting. Book launches. Book tasting. Might sound a bit papery. Book launches and food pairings and food tastings connected to the book. I'm really excited about that because
How was the process of writing the book? Was it like just stuff you'd culminated over years and kind of jotted down, and then you went, oh, okay, I'll put it all together?
The hardest thing for me was what to leave out. I could have probably written enough for like 4 books. So I had to be, good thing I had editors, because they were editing stuff like, no, Ian, too much. We only asked for like 50,000 words, and you're giving us like 200,000 type thing. But they also have a great structure. We did the content section, and then they then said, right, we need this amount of words for that section. We're going to do this structure here. So it's very, very structured, and they are so professional, the publishing company, and how they do it. And so they made it really easy for me. I just had to sit down and lock myself away for a month and write it, which is how it came about. But so excited about it. I'm like, right, I need to do another one now on another part of the rum story. So I'm working on that.
You're on the next already.
Thinking about the next one already. Nice. How to do it. Different style of rum.
Breaking it down to be important.
For
me, like, if you're looking at, I mean, I've done the educational book for EBS.
Of course.
That's 50,000 words.
It's a great book. Educational book.
But breaking it down is very important, because you can write a couple of thousand words in a week or something and go, okay, I did a thing. If you look at 50,000, you're like,
I know. I looked at the start and I said, right, we need 50,000 words. I'm like, how much pages is that?
You can't contemplate what 50,000 looks like.
When you start writing stuff. The other thing that was quite tough was how quickly information changes about rum and learning new things. There's certain things that I wrote at the start of the project that when I went back to, I'm like, that's wrong. That's out of date because I've just found out something new. So I need to change that as well. So because one thing is, this book is not gospel. When you read stuff in there, it doesn't mean it's exactly what it is. This is just my interpretation.
Exactly.
As someone who's traveling
like
around
cocktails,
the world.
I think people early in their career, or maybe early to mid in their careers, they like things to be very like structured and this is how it is. And it's like, no, dude, there's so many different recipes for Piña Colada. None of them are right or wrong.
100%. The guidelines.
Whatever, they're all guidelines. Everything in the book is guidelines. Everything I teach in EBS is guidelines. You know, it's like, it's just to help, you know, and you know, it's structured for a certain amount of time until you figure out your own path, until you're knowledgeable enough to figure out your own path. And you'll get to that point where you don't need to stay within the guidelines anymore. Like learn the basics and then just do it however you want to do it. You know,
like driving, isn't it? You learn to drive because it's structured. That you do this, do that, 10 to 2, and that type of thing. Once you pass your test, you're like this, driving your own way and that type of stuff. One hand,
I haven't had 2 hands on the steering wheel for like 10 years or something.
So yeah, it's just a structure.
So what's the name of the book again? Tell me again.
So the name of the book is Rum, a Tasting Course. You can pre-order now on Amazon. It's released September the 5th in the UK. I'm assuming it's going to be around the world around that time, between beginning of September and end of September. But yeah, it's as I said, very excited. But you can pre-order on Amazon. I just hope to see a lot of them in different bars around the world. Bartenders hope to sign a few and that type of stuff. But yeah, as I said, I'm going to enjoy my rum tasting course tour because it means, and I get to work with like 8 brands instead of just one brand. So I have 8 brands that will sponsor the tour, and then all different styles. And then we'll talk about the rums, do tastings, and I'll be there for people just to ask questions, and I can share what I've learned. And if I don't know the answer, I'll use ChatGPT. No, I'm joking. If I don't know the answer, I normally know someone who does have the answer, especially if they're really geeky and it's about fractional distillation.
Distillation. There's always that.
Staves and all that type of stuff. So so very excited about that.
Perfect. All right, thanks so much for doing this, man.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
And cheers. Cheers, sir.